Hello, I'm Tom Martin, and welcome to another episode of A San Francisco Conservative, the new podcast series in which I, Tom Martin, lifelong journalist with ABC News, CBS News, CNN, and so on, have an opportunity to ask thought-provoking questions and learn something. I certainly learn something in every one of these episodes. I hope that you do as well. And that is thanks to my wise co-host, the man of the hour, David Parker. David is author of two amazing books, Income and Wealth and A San Francisco Conservative. And David joins us from San Francisco. Hey, David, how are you today?
I'm fine. Tom, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I am back in front of my St. Golden Gate Bridge photo. I'm secretly ensconced here in Connecticut, but I miss the Bay Area. So I at least have my photo here, but I'm doing well. Thank you so much. We started a conversation in a recent one of our episodes about, you have an amazing essay, sort of parallel to all of the episodes we've been recording. You have written a number of essays on a variety of topics, and your most recent one is the four laws of economics. And we started to get into that last time. You told us how you'd gone back to school. I mean, you are and were very successful before you ever went back to school. Why did you go back to school after you were successful? You weren't worried that you'd mess anything up, I guess?
Yeah, I got a few professors mad at me because sometimes it just came out. I would tell the class, what are you doing here? Drop out right now. You don't go to school to learn how to make money. You go to school like me to see how you did it. You don't learn how to do it.
Stay safe in that ivory tower and don't venture out into the world. Yeah.
You are literally putting off the day that you start.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Literally putting off the day. Everything human beings know it's the way the universe was created. It's all trial and error.
Yeah.
Evolution, universe itself. God tried this. Oop, that didn't work. Oop, that did. Hey, string, that worked. Let's put a string out there. String theory. The whole thing is trial and error. So you're putting off trial and error. You have to make all the mistakes. You're not making any mistakes. You're being careful not to make a mistake. You don't learn if you don't make a mistake.
Exactly.
Excuse me.
Exactly. No problem. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I guess my side projects are not quite as ambitious as yours or on that scale, but I've been developing a course, an online course for authors, do-it-yourself public relations for authors. How do you attract the attention of the media? People who do what I used to do, years ago. And some of the coaches who teach people how to create these online courses say, there's so much you will never know unless you put yourself out there and you learn from your mistakes. I mean, I'm always reminded of that classic Thomas Edison line. He said, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I've copied down 10,000 ways not to invent the incandescent light bulb. And this is all part of the process. So I try to keep that in mind.
My expression is, if you don't start from the bottom, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely.
Someone's going to fool you in business from something very basic that you didn't learn the hard way.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of the basics, we've covered of the four economic laws that you've written in this amazing essay. We covered number one, and I'd like to move on to law number two. What is law number two?
Well, I've reduced a 1,000-page textbook into 4 pages through intuition. And so the order is the order I gave them.
Yes.
That has meaning to me, and maybe it's not the order that a textbook would be, but the first law I said was comparative advantage. Nations should just produce what they have an advantage over the other nations.
Okay. And so
second law is marginal utility, that the value of anything is absolutely unknowable, that it's at the margin. That's the word margin, at the moment, and it's personal. All value is subjective. So not to think in terms of absolute value, like having absolute advantage in trade. Don't trade according to your absolute advantage. Trade to your relative advantage. relative to other countries. And value is relative to the very moment, to how much you have of something already. So marginal means at the moment, the utility, the value, which is like value of something at the moment. And that's something that philosophers and economists throughout the ages could not figure out. Aristotle could not figure out why a glass of water at home may not have too much value, but a glass of water in the desert, and it's 110 degrees and your thermos is empty and you're starting to die. And someone says, here, you want a glass of water? Says, let me have that diamond ring on your finger. Sure, here it is. That glass of water all of a sudden is worth a diamond. Yeah. It's called the diamond water paradox. It's an ancient that Aristotle couldn't figure out. As late as soon as 250 years ago, Adam Smith, he got everything right in his book, Wealth of Nations, but not that. He could not solve that problem. And he fell back onto what's called the labor theory of value. Well, how much time and materials did it take to make that object? Well, that's what it's worth. And that's not what it's worth. The value is subject to the laws of demand, supply and demand. And those are subject to what an individual at a moment in time wants. The individual at home with his glass of water, he's not going to pay a lot of money for that same glass of water somebody in the desert is going to pay. So all demand is subjective. And all value is subjective, and all value is at the moment. Anything that happened in the past, you can reject. If you flip a coin 50 times and it comes up heads 50 times, what's the odds that it'll be tails on the next flip? You don't know. 50-50. And that's what it was on every single solitary flip. It was always 50-50, and it's 50-50 now. Yeah. So you think of the future. Well, do I want to bet on a 50-50 chance? That's not a great bet. If you're thinking, I give the example of you've been mistreated as a minority. You think, this country owes me. That is the worst decision thought process, because it's past. You're making a decision in the future. The decision you should be making is, should I stay here? If you think you're going to get a check for reparations for $100,000, you might want to stay. But if you don't think you're going to get that check, then you better think, well, if I go someplace else, here's my life. If I stay here, maybe it's better here. And that's why, for example, minorities who've been mistreated don't go back to where they came from. They realize they're better off here and make this country work. Put it in people's faces. But look what you're doing. Look how you treat me. That's fine. But don't make a decision to stay because this country owes you something. You're never going to collect, and it's completely false reasoning.
Yeah, no, interesting. Well, let me just take a moment to throw in a little introduction. If anyone's joining us midstream here, this is a San Francisco conservative, and that's the title of my colleague David Parker's new book, which is an amazing book, highly recommended, of course. And it's the title of our podcast series, A San Francisco Conservative. And we're talking about David's latest essay, The 4 Laws of Economics. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I know you said, the value is determined at the moment on the margin. I was thinking, if somebody's bidding, and this may not strictly be the way it really works, but bidding on an organ transplant, they need a new kidney, they need a heart. It's like the MasterCard commercial. What is it worth? It's priceless. It's worth a huge amount of money if it's a matter of life and death, obviously. So that water diamond example is quite really shines a light on it. I think that's interesting. Yeah. Do you use this principle in your work? You're a very successful real estate investor. You've been doing that for many decades now. Does marginal utility theory play a role in your work as a real estate investor?
I suppose it does play a role in everything I do, to the extent that I do things from intuition. Like if I'm analyzing a deal, you can line up all the numbers and usually you can make You don't want to ask a lawyer to analyze a deal because that's by nature, they're analytical. Well, here are the pros and here are the cons, but you're never going to get anywhere if you think like that. You have to know, there it is. You have to know what to do next. And that has nothing to do with what went on in the past. It's what you think is going to happen in the future. I'm looking at an office building right now in San Francisco. I may not buy it, but I figure people are saying, what are you doing? They're all vacant. There's nobody walking around downtown and everything is vacant. Why are you buying one? I said, well, that's why I'm buying one.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I'll just structure the deal so you can hold it. And that's how all money is lost in all business, is when there's a downturn in the economy, people can't hold on. They didn't prepare.
Yeah.
So I'm prepared to hold on. I'm prepared to even take a chance.
And
I'm not risking my whole portfolio. I'm risking a small thing. I'm going to structure the deals. I just take the loan that's on the property and not put a penny down. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I'll go to the bank and tell them, here's your new payments if you want, if you don't want this property back.
Yeah. So for everybody crawling back under the covers or what have you, and saying, oh my gosh, there's a recession coming on, there's terrible inflation. I know you've told us it's not inflation, but they're missing out. I mean, again, it's funny. I have a friend who loves using Warren Buffett as an example, and his success as an investor. He's certainly been through many, upturns and downturns and upturns and so on. And so is that really what you're talking about? To really assess what things are worth on the margin, the marginal value.
Yeah, at the moment. And what you at the moment, what you think the future is. So it's not just the very, very moment. That would be foolish. At the moment, that's where the decision is being made. Decision is not being made 10 years ago. You're making it now. And you're not making a decision 10 years later. You're making it at this moment. But it's what you think the future will be, or what you're willing to gamble on.
I was also thinking, you can tell me again if I'm thinking clearly here, but my son, I have two kids in their 20s now, and my son is finishing his 4th year of college, and he's trying different part-time jobs and deciding what career to go into. I take it for people preparing, almost at graduation point in college, they'd be wise to take a look at marginal utility theory when they're planning a profession. How are things going? What professions are really appreciated right now with that eye on the future, right?
Yeah, I would never think that way.
No? Okay.
You go to college to get an education.
Yeah.
You should really be reading, certainly in the first 2 years of college, all the Greeks and the Romans, the ones that have lasted over the centuries, and then up through the Renaissance and today, those authors that are still being read, and then just read the greatest works.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you don't know what you want to do, then you might not be successful. You better, because college is not for learning what you want to do in life. You have to know.
Yeah.
And your sons know deep down what they really want. I assure you, you suggest something to them, I don't want to do that, because they know they don't want to do certain things, and they probably know what they want to do.
Yeah.
So when you're in college, don't be worrying about that. Don't call it. Otherwise, you're going to a trade school. Don't go to college to learn how to repair cars.
Yeah.
Don't go to college to learn how to work a computer. It's not a job you can't learn with 6 months working full time on the job.
Yeah. No,
You could be a brain surgeon in 6 months. A few tasks you wouldn't want to do, and you hire a real brain surgeon. Okay, I've got it all prepared for you. I cleaned it up. You do the final touch. But that's one of the few exceptions. Everything else you can learn 6 months on the job.
Make a few errors along the way. It's part of the learning process.
So you.
Okay. Yes.
I don't believe a college sophomore or freshman should be telling professors what they should be saying. They're not prepared yet. They're not. That's called woke. You should study. And when you've studied really seriously for 2 years in college or more, then you can start suggesting something to professors, but not before.
Right. Right. No, I certainly agree with you there. And what you were saying as far as that foundation, what a good education is or should be, reminds me a few years ago as my daughter she graduated about 2 years ago. We were visiting different colleges, considering different colleges, and we visited Columbia University in New York City. And they were saying, they're very good at their engineering school is very successful right now. However, they pride themselves on teaching the classics. It's the liberal
Yeah.
arts, and I know some colleges are getting away from that. They think, oh no, but I was impressed.
Huge
Yeah.
mistake.
Yeah.
University of Chicago is known for the great books or the classics.
Yeah.
And I had that education, so I know I'm so grateful that I had it, because I read so much before I finished college, not to mention what I read afterward. And I'm so grateful to that. My own 2 children went to college, and I says, if I hear you're taking classes in business or in computers, I'm cutting all the funds. And they both majored in history. And then when they graduated, they both ran out and did what they always wanted to do. My daughter's today in California. She's known as one of the finest cake designers. And my son is a furniture maker in a Japanese method of no nails, no screws, just fine joinery. And he designs, he gets the Google accounts, everything. Both my kids went to the top in their fields. But after they both ran out to art school or to cooking school after they had their education. That's what I wanted. That's what they did. They both majored in history.
Yeah, that's
It
really
says
great.
you read and write when you're in college. Read and write and read and write and read and write.
Mhm. I love that. That's
Not
really
trade school.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, another fascinating conversation. I learned more again. Once again, it's like clockwork. It's amazing. So thank you so much. And I want to encourage all of our viewers, all of our listeners to pick up copies of David's books, Income and Wealth, and A San Francisco Conservative. You can do that by visiting his website, davidparkeressays.com, or by going to Amazon. So thanks very much. This was really wonderful. Appreciate it.